joining us today for our mobile technology for the digital classroom presentation. My name is Glenn Collins, and I'll be your host for our time together today. I'm an executive here at CDI Computers responsible for a program we call Education Ready Mobile Devices. This is a project we started a number of years ago when we saw the impact that mobile technology was going to have on the transformation in the classroom. In my role, I spend a lot of time talking to educators and technologists in education like yourselves, as well as many of the vendor partners like Microsoft, Google, Intel, and a number of software organizations. And today is really a brief snapshot of some of the many lessons I've learned from your peers and from those vendor partners in terms of the challenges and opportunities and considerations when integrating mobile technology into the classroom. So it's really my belief that mobile technology will continue to kind of have an enormous impact in terms of the way we educate our youth over the next 10 years. Many of the changes that experts have been talking about in terms of teaching methodologies are really only possible if all of the students have access to the right technology, and not only have access to it, but likely have access to it when they need it and where they need it. So, educational organizations are going to have to provide students with the flexibility, the mobility, and adaptive technology to allow them to learn anywhere, anytime, and in a fashion that allows them, for each student, to learn in a way that best suits their individual needs. That's where we're going. The technology we're going to talk about today will help us get there. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as just buying inexpensive devices for each student. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of hard work, a lot of money to invest in the right infrastructure, online content, curriculum, etc. So the device that we're going to talk about today is only part of the formula, and we just want to talk about the rest of the formula if you don't know. From a digital classroom perspective, this is a question we hear and a comment we talk about quite a bit, is just the transition to the digital classroom. And the definition of the digital classroom has changed and continues to evolve as technology changes and more digital content is created or is available to teachers, etc. Currently, I kind of define a digital classroom as a technology-enabled classroom where learning is fully supported through the strategic use of digital content and the communication technologies and tools that go along with that. So by having the right technology in place, it actually allows for the introduction of a variety of digital tools and services in the classroom, which over time will become a normal part of the learning environment. And it truly enhances the learning experience. It provides the capability of providing flexibility in the way material is presented so students can learn at their own pace and in a multiple methods that match their individual learning styles. It also enables educators and students to overcome some of the barriers that are there today in terms of distance learning or how to communicate more effectively or learn remotely. And it provides instructors with the ability to enhance the content of their materials using rich media such as images, video, audio, etc. So it really does enhance the learning environment. We talk about learning methodologies and constantly talking about reviewing the way we teach students and how we engage them more effectively. And really having the right technology in place allows for a diversity of the new learning methods that are talked about, such as blended learning, where a combination of teacher-led sessions is supported by online materials. There's a lot of talk about flipped learning or flipped classrooms, where the teacher-led portion and the homework portion are reversed in terms of how they're presented today. So the students would use the technology to get introduced to a concept online, and when they're in their class, they apply that knowledge by solving problems or doing practical work. And the teacher tutors the students when they become stuck or have an issue, rather than imparting the initial lesson on the person. So that's the concept of flipped classrooms, but as you can imagine, it can only be achieved if the right technology is in place. And then you start to look at things like distance learning or guest lecturers, which this technology allows the students to access not only while they're at the classroom, but while they're at home. So there's lots of content out there that allows them to learn concepts by using this technology. And it allows students, teachers to use a variety of online tools for learning, like Wikipedia, Google Search, Open Class, Khan Academy, which is what I was thinking about a minute ago in terms of content where students can learn or reinforce concepts with content that's online. We also see a lot of social media tools, for blogging kind of tools that are controlled by the school or the content provider that allow teachers to create content, distribute courseware, or to help students collaborate on projects, etc. Teachers we see using the technology for professional development as well as keeping current on courseware or for distributing assignment materials or even for doing assessments and testing. Digital textbooks, free education software, and online curriculum can only really be used if the students do have the right technology and they have it available to them on a regular basis. And again, the ideal scenario is to have it available anywhere, anytime, so they can learn in the fashion that best suits them. What is helping drive this transition is really the change to affordable devices. The devices have much better screens than they did a few years ago. The devices now have all-day batteries, so a student isn't running to plug it in all the time. You don't need the same infrastructure from a wired standpoint. You don't need network drops everywhere in the classroom because the wireless infrastructure is so much better than it used to be. And with E-rate, a lot of educational organizations have managed to make investments in their Wi-Fi infrastructure that allow the devices to be used in a learning experience that couldn't have previously been done. So, what are the considerations you have to think about when you're choosing the device, the ecosystem, etc.? And this is a question we go through constantly with our customers when we engage with them in terms of transitioning to some hybrid version of one-to-one. So either they're putting devices in students' hands to take home, or they're doing labs, etc. But really the same questions apply, and it is, what's the intent for the use for the device? So we see a lot of people racing to certain devices for price, for manageability, etc., when they really haven't thought about what the device is going to be used for. So the first thing we always have the conversation with the customer is, tell us a little bit about what you're going to do with the device. Are you going mobile? Is the device going to be used for specific subjects? Is it online use, offline use? Does the screen size matter? How do you figure out which device will run which application? So which applications are really important? How do you see the students utilizing the device, etc.? How do you plan on deploying the device, both short-term and long-term? Because I think everybody's goal would be to get to one-to-one eventually, and likely get to one-to-one in an affordable way where the students could carry the device with them wherever they went, and they had a profile that followed them, etc. But the reality is that's not going to happen day one. So how do I look at my long-term goal with my short-term realities and pick the right device that'll suit both those environments? So am I going to, short-term, am I deploying it in labs, in specific classes? Is it going to start going home with the students right away? All of those things will help you determine two things. One of them is, what ecosystem should I choose, which is the question we get asked all the time, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. And the next question is, once I choose that ecosystem, what does the device look like that I give to the student, or the edge device that I'm going to have my users use? So some of the other questions are, what ecosystem are you engaged with today? What online environments are you utilizing? Is it iCloud? Is it Google Apps? Is it the Microsoft environment? Are you a Microsoft shop? Do you want to manage these using your Active Directory profiles, etc.? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself in determining ecosystem and device. Will I use these devices for state testing? I think overwhelmingly when we talk to customers, the answer is yes. So the device and the ecosystem have to allow you to use that device because most people can't afford to have both these mobile devices and devices specifically for online testing. And then the last thing you look at is the investment you've already made in your current infrastructure. How can I leverage that? And I think a lot of people that went early with iPads realized that there was a lot of investment outside of the device that was required that you'd already made in your Windows environment. So you had to go back and rebuild some of that. So the question is, if you've already done that, then your current investments can be leveraged with a number of devices. The question that a lot of people, or the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is the cost outside of the device if you start to change ecosystems. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the question really isn't, to me, isn't whether you're going to go mobile, whether you're going to go one-to-one. I think it's inevitable. As I said earlier, I think it is, incumbent upon educational organizations to provide the students with the flexibility to learn anywhere, anytime. And the only way you can really do that is some form of mobile device. So my assumption is that it may be next year, it may be the year after, it may be a few years, but you're going to move in a direction that gives the students that capability. The question now is, which ecosystem do you start to look at? You've got your iPad environment with ISO. You've got Google in two formats. One is an Android tablet or Android device, and the other is Chrome, the Chrome OS or Chromebooks. And then you've got Microsoft Windows, and a lot of you, I'm sure, are running Windows 7, but with the advent of Windows 8 and Windows 10, there's some changes in the devices. So it's a tough choice. This is a conversation, as I said, we constantly have with customers. And in some cases, the answer is actually more than one of these. And I think that's, you have to be open to that consideration. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend a few minutes and talk about each of those ecosystems and the kind of surrounding devices and the pros and cons of each of those. And again, I tell you that at the end of today, you will, because I always get asked for these copies of these things, you will get copies of the slides and copies of the recorded presentation if you decide you'd like it. So from an iPad standpoint, they were first to market. They're still dominant in the marketplace in terms of deployment, although they're getting caught both by, and when I say this, I'm only talking about mobile devices. Obviously, the number of Windows devices in schools far outnumbers these numbers. But from a mobile standpoint, they actually broke the mold, and I thank them because it created a job for somebody like me in the mobile world in education. And they really revolutionized the way that students can engage in content. And but as anybody who, and I'm sure about a third of you said you have iPads today, know that there were some challenges in deploying them in the field. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons. So the good news is there's lots of applications. It's a known commodity, certainly a loved device from a consumer perspective. So a lot of teachers and students have the devices. There's not a big learning curve. The product's great quality. It's a long life battery. It's got rich communications in terms of Wi-Fi. You've got 4G capability, great camera. It's a great screen. And they've made some strides in terms of managing the devices. It was a huge challenge when the devices first came out. And I know IT guys pulled out a lot of hair trying to deploy these in their environment. And there are still some scars and wounds out there. But I think Apple and their vendors have got better at providing tools to allow you to manage those devices. The cons of the device are really, in terms of total cost of ownership, it's relatively expensive. So you do have to typically build a secondary ecosystem to manage them. The device itself is not that expensive, but when you start to add covers and keyboards and all of the other things you really need to use it, it all adds up. So my belief is that from a total cost of ownership, it is relatively expensive. I have not heard anybody in IT that has anything nice to say about iTunes and the way they are dependent on it and the way it is really designed as a consumer store, although it is changing. And I would suspect that Apple is starting to get hurt specifically by Chromebooks. They will continue to tweak iTunes for education so that it will become better, but it does have some challenges. For those of you who are Active Directory driven in terms of policy, security, profiles, etc., you all know that you can't use Active Directory to manage these devices. So again, it's an ecosystem that you have to parallel. It doesn't have flash, which creates some issues with online content. It's not really designed to be a multitasking, multi-user device. It's a single user device. The best way I can describe an iPad is it's a consumer device. It is not designed to run in an enterprise. And that may change, and I would suspect it will over time, but that is the big challenge. So everything are kind of workarounds to get it to be the device you want. So the next platform we're going to talk about is Windows. everybody's very familiar with Windows, and everybody's very familiar with probably up to Windows 7. Windows 8, Windows RT, when it first came out, got a really bad rap, and rightly so. Windows 8.1 and Windows 10 are actually way better and do actually provide you with a cost-effective solution that fits into your current environment. So again, it's a choice of do you want to continue down the Windows or Microsoft path or look elsewhere. But it is starting to pick up momentum in the education space in terms of mobile devices. I'm sure most of the people on the phone today have notebooks or netbooks that are running Windows 7. You start to move into smaller devices, 2-in-1s. You start to gain some advantages in terms of flexibility and mobility. So the Pros runs all the Windows apps, easy to administer from an Active Directory compliant perspective. So you plug it in, it's a Windows device, and off you go. It has touch and it has ink, and there's lots of studies that talk about the value of being able to write on the screen in terms of learning and the way that you learn better when you actually write as opposed to type. So there is some advantage to being able to do that. Supports USB and SD cards, so you do have external storage, etc. The quality of the Windows products are pretty good. The Microsoft programs that they offer for education are actually very similar to what Google offers, only they've done a terrible job of telling everyone. So you can actually do a lot of free stuff, and Microsoft has a lot of really cool stuff for the classrooms, but they've done a really bad job of talking about it. So I encourage you, before you make any decision, is to do some research on that. And again, this is an enterprise device. These run Windows Pro. It authenticates on your network, and it runs very much like any other Windows device. So what are the cons? Well, it's harder to deploy than, certainly harder to deploy than Chromebooks. And I guess when I talked about the cons, I was really comparing it to Chromebooks. It's, in some cases, easier than iPads, but because it's very similar to deploying a notebook. But it isn't a plug-and-play as easy as Chromebooks. And I know Microsoft is very aware of the challenge that educators have rolling out these devices, and they're working diligently to repair some of the challenges to allow you to do things like register a whole bunch of students in a batch as opposed to one at a time for their Microsoft accounts. All of those things they're moving toward and syncing with your Active Directory, etc. Windows updates, we all love those. Again, they're aware of it, but it is a challenge where you don't have that challenge with Chromebooks. They really are trying to gain market space, but they are far behind iPads in terms of their ability or their market share. A lot of the products that you look at are consumer devices, very much like an iPad. And that the only thing that means is when I talk to the manufacturers, which I do daily, about their devices, and you say how long you expect a tablet to last or a 2-in-1 to last, if it's a consumer device, inevitably the answer is 24 months. The battery life, etc., is designed to run that long, and then it will start to deteriorate to the point where it may not be usable in the classroom. So one of the challenges is finding the right device that's designed for education. And again, it's coming. So we have some stuff we're going to talk about, but they're coming. There's a lot of people that don't know enough about Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, so there are some requirements of professional development, both for the technologists and the teachers in terms of utilizing the features, because it's got some fabulous features, again, that nobody really knows about. So it is something that if you're going to deploy it, you need to spend some time and money and do some professional development to get the most out of it. And I always say it's not an iPad. So because iPads established in the marketplace, there is some user reluctance to move away from that to another ecosystem. From an Android standpoint, pros are, I mean, there's tons of free applications. There are a wide selection of devices. Certainly from a price perspective, it's the least expensive device, not necessarily total cost of ownership, but certainly the least expensive device. You can buy, $79 devices. You can buy $500 devices, and typically you get what you pay for. So you get features and quality in the more expensive ones that are missing in the lower end ones. But if you understand what you need and you're comfortable with it, then you can actually save some money on the device itself. It supports flash, it does multitasking, you can have multi-profiles on the device from Android 4.4 on. It supports USB and typically has an SD card support if the device has that. So the cons are really the standards are less standardized, if you will. Again, they're not, at least currently Google's not as stringent in terms of applications that are published to the Play Store as Apple is or Microsoft are. It's not an iPad, as I said earlier, so there are some people that have a learning curve, although there are more and more people using it in their non-professional life, so that interface use, the use of Android is becoming more and more the norm. But very much like an iPad, you need to build an ecosystem outside your Microsoft ecosystem to manage the device. So that creates a bit of a challenge. As I said, the quality of the apps are questionable. There's all kinds of vendors producing devices and all kinds of vendors producing applications, and again, they aren't at the same level as some of the other devices. From a Chromebook standpoint, and just from what you guys have told me in your, at least 40% of you are looking at deploying Chromebooks. So obviously, Chrome is a device that's meant to be an extension of the internet. It's really not an appliance that needs to be online. So what are the pros of it? Well, it's very easy. A, the price is really good. B, it's very easy to deploy. From a classroom standpoint, you turn it on, it boots up, so there's not a lot of time waiting for students to get online. It's easy to manage using their console. There's some offline app support, but not lots. You don't have to worry about viruses or updates, or from that standpoint, Google Apps provides a lot of free applications. So the cons have been, and this is changing, but early on, the quality of the devices, again, it's a reflection of the price, but if you were paying $200 for a Chromebook, it probably didn't last the length of period of time that you would expect it to last. There's not as many moving parts in it, so it should last longer, but the quality of the devices early on was not great, although we're seeing that change fairly quickly. So the big challenge is really what you lose the flexibility of working offline to any degree. So if you were, say, going one-to-one and students were taking this home, then any student that had high speed and didn't have high speed, which I assume over time will become the norm, but for more economically challenged territories, this is a challenge in terms of giving some students an advantage over others because they have high speed at home. So some of the systems, some of the student systems aren't supported on it, so you're still going to have to run multiple ecosystems. It doesn't run Microsoft Office as opposed to some of the other devices. You can get touch, but you lose a lot of the other advantages once you go there. And again, you have to have the infrastructure to support this. So you need the bandwidth, you need the support, and then you get into challenges like local printers, etc. So there are some things you have to consider before you just run out and plug in Chromebooks. The other thing is, what I've learned over the last 12 months, which kind of surprised me, was how important it is to do your homework up front before you deploy your first Chromebook, both from a Google Apps standpoint and a management console standpoint. And I encourage you to make sure you take your time, and if you need some help, we have some folks that can help you in terms of what you should be doing before you set these up, because it does become really easy if you do it right the first time, and then you kind of grow from there. So those are kind of the pros and cons of the 4 ecosystems. I'm sure you didn't learn tons. You may have got some stuff reinforced, and hopefully some of the gray areas became black or white. So when we are looking at a device, or when you look at a device, here are the things that we recommend you make sure you look for, regardless of which ecosystem it is. The first thing is, can this device stand up to the rigors of the classroom? We all know that students do whatever they can to the devices, and they're not very gentle on them. So every time we look at a device to bring to market, we always examine it to say, is this a device that can stand up for 3 to 4 years in a classroom where we expect it to take some kind of abuse? Most of the products out there, you have to be aware, are designed for the consumer space that we talked about earlier. The next thing to talk about is physical size in terms of screen size. You know, is it going to meet the requirements of state testing? Is 10.1 inch, portable enough for the young children, and is 14 inches too big for them to carry around? So it's really the size and weight of the device. And then screen resolution, although this is becoming less and less, the standards are getting better and better all the time, but there are a couple things to think about from a screen standpoint. We can build a device with a less expensive screen, but the viewing angle isn't as good. It's based on the layers of glass, et cetera, and the way it's lit. So you can have a screen where if it's one-to-one student and they're staring straight at it, it works fine, but if 3 students are sharing a tablet, then the people on the outside don't have nearly as clear a view. But there are screens that allow you to do that. So again, how important is that resolution? It depends a little bit on how it's going to be used. Certainly Wi-Fi has become, especially in North America, a huge consideration. So we are working diligently to make sure every device we have has the highest available bandwidth that can take advantage of a lot of the investments that districts have made in infrastructure. There is not a lot of inexpensive devices today that allow AC, wireless capability, although you're looking for dual band, dual MIMO, which is dual channel, that will give you about 200 megabits per second, and that seems to be adequate. If you're logging on 30 students at a time and you have something less than that, it becomes a bit of a challenge sometimes. So just be aware that Wi-Fi is, and even saying dual band doesn't really give you the what you need in terms of speed, unless it's got the dual channel. Battery life, again, becoming fairly standard from 6 to 10, 12 hours. The size of the RAM, the size of the internal storage, minimum 2 gigs, minimum 64 gig. Make sure that you have the right ports so that you can utilize it with the other infrastructure in your organization. So those are the things, whether it's a Chromebook, a Windows tablet, an iPad, or an Android tablet, that we recommend you consider for any device you're looking at. So once you've chosen the right devices, what are the other considerations? And these are the things we talk to customers about as much as the ecosystem and the choice of the device. So once I've chosen the right device, I know I got a lot, about 80% of your technologists. So you are challenged with managing these. Typically, when you start to move to a one-to-one, the ratio of technicians to technology gets ridiculous. So it's bad enough with desktops. When you start to enter mobile devices, you've got a couple new challenges. One, typically you have more devices, and 2, they're moving or they're movable. So and they're not wired. So challenge is to manage these effectively. So when you're moving this, one of the considerations is mobile device management. How am I going to manage these? How am I going to do over-the-air application pushes? How am I going to manage the security? How am I going to make sure they don't get stolen? How do I make sure that I have my security policies pushed out? And how do I make sure that if a student starts to mess around with the configuration or make changes, that I can either prevent it and or be notified that a change has been made? And the mobile device management products allow you to do those things. So one of the key elements when you're looking at this is, how am I going to manage them? The next thing that has become much more predominant than it had in the past is the ability to manage the devices in the classroom. So giving the teachers the ability to leverage the technology so it becomes a tool instead of a distraction is really important. How do you make sure that you're spending all this money on technology, that you're getting the most out of it in the classroom? How do I give the teacher the ability to leverage it as much as possible? How can I get them to help use it to do instruction? How can I make sure they're monitoring what the children are doing? What about testing and et cetera? Can I give them those tools? And a lot of the classroom management products allow you to do these things. So we think as part of the product, you need to consider doing this stuff. And again, then you get into learning tools, things like online curriculum to augment testing. Somebody said they lost the audio. I'm not sure why. We shouldn't have. Let me know if anybody else is having an issue. Okay, looks like everybody else still has audio. Okay, so sorry, Melody, I'm not sure why. Maybe you could dial back in. Okay, so things like online curriculum to augment teaching, the teachers and the ability to do that. So not just having the device, but how am I going to use it? What tools are available either with it or, you know, what can I buy or what do I have in place? So other things that you want to look for are things like independent learning plans. How do I utilize this technology now in a format that allows me to have that flexibility I talked about earlier? Is there a way that I can create independent learning plans for each student so that they can utilize the technology to drive the curriculum specifically for them? Are there assessment tools? Because we all know that teachers, you know, it's a lot of time and energy to create tests and mark them, etc. Is there a way to create that so that I can share it with others, I can do the assessments automatically, I can discover sooner that some of the concepts aren't sinking in so I can make changes for those specific students. And then content, and we get asked this all the time about content creation, sharing, pushing courseware out, etc. Thankfully, there's a lot of free, excellent tools to do that. Things like Skype or Google Hangout in terms of sharing teachers or sharing resources. How do I utilize those, and then how do I make sure they don't get abused? And then screen sharing tools. So we always get asked, not only do we want to put these in the classroom, but we've got a projector, we've got a whiteboard, we've got a smart television, and I need the teacher to be able to take their content and project it on that device. So how do I make sure that is available? And then some other pretty typical tools are drawing, mail, etc. You know, I got asked the other day from a magazine that was doing an interview with me in terms of what do I think the biggest challenge is in terms of moving to the 21st century learning environment. And my first reaction was time, resources, and money for professional development. I think the technology has now passed our ability to use it effectively in the classroom, and that we really have to make sure that when we're doing these deployments that we consider how we're going to give the teachers the skills to utilize it effectively. So some of the things that you look for are, you know, how am I going to support my technical people in terms of teaching them to use this? But in most cases, that's not as big a learning curve as teaching the teachers from a pedagogy standpoint and from a tactical standpoint how to use the devices in the classroom. So how do I use any technology and engage students more effectively, and then how do I use the programs that are available to me to utilize and engage students more effectively. And then things like warranty repair, whether you want to do a self-maintenance program, etc. within the school, is there training for that? What about students? What about admins? What about parents? And then we're also finding, because the community is often doing a bond or some kind of fundraising for moving to one-to-one, that we also have to somewhat educate the community on the impact this transition is happening for their investment. And so a lot of the organizations that we are engaged with, we help do some press and PR for their community. And then from a warranty standpoint, the changes are fairly drastic in terms that if you start to move to a one-to-one, or if the technology becomes such an important tool in the classroom, it's really hard for the students to learn without it. So you have to have the flexibility, you have to have a program that ensures that you can repair quickly, that you can repair cost effectively, that you can replace, you have hot swaps for replacing, etc. What we find when we're engaged is we typically do a customized warranty program for almost every organization we end up engaged with. So this slide might look a little familiar, and this is because when I talked to you earlier about what we suggest to people to think about is our strategy in terms of mobile devices. So I talked earlier about what we consider education-ready mobile devices. And in those education-ready mobile devices, we've chosen what we believe is the right device or devices in each environment. We've built in, provided, bundled in management tools and educational content like curriculum, like practice for state testing. We have available, depending on the size of the deployment, both free online and face-to-face professional development. And as I said a minute ago, we find that we have to kind of do a customized warranty support program depending on the deployment itself. So every device we look at, we try to, understanding that everybody has a funding issue, we try to bring the right price for the right value. So we don't over-engineer anything. We know that there's not a lot of schools that are going to spend $1,000 on a tablet or a Chromebook or anything else. But we need to kind of put some features in there that may not be available in a consumer product. So our challenge is to make sure we give you kind of that sweet spot of great, the best product we can, but still keep it very competitive. So that's our goal when we're building any of these devices. We would make sure they're all state testing compliant. They have a robust battery. It has all the I/O ports you need. And in any of the tablets, we make sure that they come all together with a keyboard that's connected, that meets all the requirements of state testing, etc. And then I'll talk a little bit about our CDI education software suite, which we bundle with all the devices we sell. So today in our family of education-ready devices, we have 3 or 4. Actually, we have 2 devices that look like this, 2 that look like this, and 2 that look like this. So we have 6 different devices. These are both 2-in-1s, and this is actually an inexpensive notebook. And so we have these devices that we think all come bundled with the software that we're going to talk about in a second. They're all what we call education-ready devices. We have an Android device as well, starting at $299. It comes with a hard keyboard. We have a ruggedized Chromebook that we've had customers literally throw it down the hall, and it keeps on ticking. And we have a new series of Chromebooks that we're going to announce officially at the end of the month that are value Chromebooks, but semi-rugged. So they are, even though they're in the $200 range, they're really designed to stand up to the abuse in a classroom. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our CDI software suite that we bundle with these education-ready devices. So we talked earlier about the importance of mobile device management. So we have a couple of options for customers to choose from. We have a free version of the mobile device management, which comes with every education-ready device that allows you to do the basic management of the device. You can do it all from a central location. You get a single window. You can manage all the devices. It's ecosystem agnostic, so it'll run iPads, Android devices, Windows devices, and Chromebooks. But some of them are limited based on the I/O because the operating system doesn't allow you to do some of the things that a Windows device might do, etc. But you can do inventory management. You can push and manage all your security policies. You can monitor and report on all the mobile devices. You can push out applications, etc., all from a single location. And it gives you like inventory, shows you where all the devices are, etc. So that's the Meraki product. It's made by Cisco. And that's actually free to anyone. So we're bundling it on the device. You could go get it yourself for free. Our value in that scenario is we will support the product. We'll help you set it up. We'll answer questions for you, etc. That service from Cisco is about $18 a year per device. So we do provide some good value. We also have an exceptional deal with MAS 360. And we have an exceptional value on that. It is in Gartner's group, the top quadrant, the top performing mobile device management. It typically sells for about $12 per year per device, and we would sell that for substantially less than that. Both of them provide inventory management, application delivery, the control, geofencing, time fencing, security policy setting, etc. The MAS 360 is a much more robust product. Again, these are just some of the things that you can do with it. You can quarantine. You can authenticate against your Active Directory. So you can actually sync with your Active Directory for your devices, your Wi-Fi settings, etc. You can do all that remotely. And again, this is just talking about mobile device management in both of those applications. And I know Tom sent me something about Meraki's changing the rules on the free ones. Again, Tom will be happy to take that offline. We will do some work in terms of webinars specifically on both the classroom management and the mobile device management, only because it's a very detailed, we could spend an hour on this subject alone. as well as mobile device management. All of our education-ready devices come bundled with NetSupport classroom management. It's actually NetSupport School. And it allows the teachers in the school, in their classroom, to remotely manage all the devices, to share their screen, to share the student screen with everybody, to project their screen on the projector, to project other students on the projector. They monitor each of the kids. And as you can see in this picture here, these are all thumbnails of all the devices in a classroom. I simply click on any of those. I drill into that individual. I can see what they're doing. I can see applications running in the background, etc. If you are interested, by the way, in either a webinar on mobile device management or classroom management, send me a question or just tell me in your question, and we'll make sure that you get invited to those, because we do these quite a bit. There's some really cool things in NetSupport. Part of it is the ability for the teachers to do quizzes and tests, and they can do them in a format that's competitive. They can collaborate. They can do groups. They can, pull automatically all of the answers from the students. They can see who answered right. They can see who answered first. They can do all of those things. So we're really excited about this partnership. This is a $39 value if you were to buy the license, and we include it free in all the devices. The other thing we include free is a product called MobyMax, which is a K-8 curriculum software. It is an absolutely fabulous product. I encourage you. There's some video links here. When you get the slides tomorrow, go look at them. The feedback from the teachers is absolutely fabulous. It is a product whose genesis started in special ed, and then they moved out to general curriculum. So the basis of this is all independent learning plans. So every student goes through a baseline of testing for the curriculum that they're going to be served up for that semester or that year, and then their curriculum is independently formed, and they are measured against that independent curriculum. The students really like it because they can earn time on games, they can earn badges, they can earn, so that the elementary school children love it. And if you go on the website, you can go to your state and see all of the schools that are utilizing it. You can also see that in each state, the grade point average per subject is listed. So the impact of the student using it is very positive, and you can actually see the results that they've measured by state of using the product. This is free for 1 year for any device you buy, and there's no limitation on the number of students for that device. So if you're building a lab and there's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 kids using a device, each of those will be able to utilize the first year subscription. The good news is that ongoing, the cost of this is fairly inexpensive. So if you decided you wanted to use it for a classroom, for example, or a teacher, so everybody that the teacher had in their classes for that year, the total cost to do that is $99. For an entire school, it's only $5.99. And if you were to go district-wide, it's as cheap as $2.99 a school if you have enough schools. The next product that we include free for a semester is Access Learning. Access Learning is a full curriculum of high school. So it's 9 to 12, and I mean full curriculum. You could literally do your whole high school without going to class. What teachers really like is obviously the augmentation of being able to teach using this curriculum. It is modifiable by the teacher, so a teacher can actually go in and change the lessons, add videos, add images, all of those things. It also allows you to do credit recovery, and it allows you to do some elective courses. I think they have 21 elective courses. And then it's free for a semester, and then it's $99 per student per year going forward. And then we are just formalizing a relationship with a company called Castle Rock Research, and they have been providing study guides in the printed format for about 20 years and have, in the last year and a half, put everything online. So they have complete study guides specific to the state from grade 3 to grade 12 that mimic the state testing. So unlike many of the other programs that you have a single level of testing, so it asks you a question, it's multiple choice, etc. These guys have actually built it so that it mimics exactly what the state testing is. It says if I get this answer, I might get another question asked. So it allows you to go multiple layers into a question. And anybody that's attending today's webinar, we will send you out a notice, but you have the ability to have access to this for your school, for all the students in your school, for the balance of the school year. So if that's something you're interested in, again, we will send a notice out, but please flip me a note on your question piece there just so I make sure that you get the right information. And it really is, it does allow your students, and we think the timing is perfect because it'll allow your students to ready themselves for the upcoming online state testing. With Windows, these are some of the programs that come included with Windows. So I'm going to touch on a couple of them because I'm running I got 7 minutes left and I still got some stuff to cover. So here are the things that I encourage you to go look at is a OneNote. I don't know how many people are interested in OneNote or have used OneNote, but I personally think it's the best program that Microsoft has ever built. And they actually have developed OneNote for the classroom. So it is designed specifically for a teacher. It is free if you're using Windows 365 or Office 365. It's free to you. You can manage all of your students. You can distribute courseware. You can manage their homework. They have access to it. You have access to it. It's fantastic. I've sat through a couple of Microsoft sessions where teachers, the room was full of teachers, and they're literally salivating at the end of that presentation. It's an unbelievably great product. Like Office Mix, again, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if you're using Office 365, it's free. It allows, as a teacher, to record any of your lessons and then post them free online to share with your students or other people. You have the ability to restrict it to whoever you want or give access to whoever you want. The unique part about it is, I spent a lot of time doing online training and online learning content. You need no technical skills at all to be able to do this effectively. You could teach somebody to use Office Mix in 20 minutes. So it's a really powerful tool. And again, when we've shown it to teachers, they love it. So out of all of this, and Skype, and you get a terabyte of storage on OneDrive, et cetera, for the students, out of all of those are the ones that I think people will get the most out of quickly. So I encourage you to go look at that online. Obviously with Google, one of the advantages they have in their ecosystem is the free product that they provide, including Google Apps. They also have Google Classroom, which much like OneNote allows the teachers to distribute, manage, provide, collect homework and do all of those things. You're all familiar with Gmail, Map, YouTube, Google Search. If you're using Google Search through Google applications for education, there's no advertising. There's a lot of restrictions on what can be searched, et cetera. So they built a search tool specifically for education. And then for those of you who aren't familiar in thinking of doing Chrome actually has a really good management console that allows you to manage both the device and the individual. So I can put restrictions on a device. I can also give an individual roaming profile, basically, so whatever device they log on, you can kind of build your policies in terms of what you allow them to have access to around that. And then from a professional training standpoint, professional development standpoint, as I said earlier, I really encourage customers who are deploying large quantities of mobile devices to engage us in terms of this. We work really hard with NetSupport, Microsoft, Intel, Google, et cetera, to provide as much free training as we can. And there's some great online stuff from all of those vendors. And then we do some specific training for the application or device that we are selling. I'm going to rushing through this only because we're almost done. And then from a warranty perspective, as I talked about before, we do coverage up to 4 years on the mobile devices. We do have accidental damage coverage available up to 4 years on any of the devices. We have deployment services. We can do all of those things that you need done in terms of deploying this, because I know a lot of you are very, very restricted on the number of resources you have to do this. So we often, when we're doing these kind of programs, engage students in terms of deployment services so they can come work for us part-time. We give them some skills when we're doing deployment in your area. Or we have some schools that are looking at teaching their students to repair the devices. So we'll come out and do some training, and we'll do give you the standard operating procedure. If there's specific tools, we'll supply them, and then typically consigned parts, etc. Again, the desire is you've got to have devices available quickly You can't possibly send it back, wait for it to be repaired, and come back to you because a student is out of pocket and they can't learn without a device. So I'm going to go through this real quickly. We've got a number of devices. This is one of the Windows devices that's very much like a Surface, 10.1 inch, 2 gigs, 64 gigs, dual band, dual MIMO wireless, headphone jack. It's got everything you need, $359 with an attached keyboard, stylus, protective case, etc. And that comes bundled with all the software we talked about earlier. We also have 2 versions of a device that was designed by Intel, which is semi-rugged. Literally, will stand up to the kids dropping it off the desk or from their arms if they drop it on the floor. Again, comes with an attachable keyboard. This particular device is high-end, has a great screen on it, sells for $499. Comes with all the software we talked about, plus a whole pile of software from Intel called the Intel Software Stack. I encourage you, if this is something that interests you, to reach out to your rep. We also have a new version of this that's $100 less, has a TN screen, which is less of a viewing angle, still high resolution, the latest Bay Trail T processor, and the other one, this one had a battery, has a battery in the keyboard, so it gives you 14 hours. This does not have a battery in the keyboard, but just still does give you 8 to 9 hours of battery life. Then this is our ruggedized Chromebook I talked about, quad-core Intel processor, 4 gigs of memory. For those of you who know anything about Chromebooks, the one thing you always got to ask is Google has a benchmark for performance. Some of these statistics are less important in a Chromebook than they are in a PC because a lot of the computation happens online. So the wireless, the way it manages the communication is maybe more important than the processor. You can look at almost every device in terms of a benchmark that Google does called a Google Octane, and that will tell you it's a range of 0 to 10,000 what kind of performance it has. So you can actually compare devices in terms of its performance. This device falls in the 73 to 7400 range in terms of Octane. Skipping ahead. So we've also got a 14-inch and 11-inch tablet available, or sorry, notebooks available. Very cost-effective, $269 for this device. 32 gig, 2 gigs, Windows Pro, all the software we talked about, etc. Mobile cards for storage and charging. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that are coming. We have, as I said earlier, a Chromebook coming that we will announce officially at the end of the month. That is a quad-core processor, again, 7300 Octane range from Google. And I am not even allowed to show you images of it yet, but it's a really nice-looking product, trust me. And it's going to sell in the $200 range for the 2 gig and about $219 for the 4 gig. We have designed and will be releasing this summer a tablet that's specifically designed for education. And the uniqueness of this device, this design is, it will have a field replaceable battery. It will have a retractable handle, which allows it not to tip. So when I open this device up, if I have the handle open and the kids are pushing on the device, it won't tip over. Somebody asked me, the prices are all US. So what we can provide you, Canadian as well. Has a RJ45 jack, which surprised me, but we're getting asked by the IT guys all the time if we can get them a device with a RJ45 for imaging, etc. Exactly the same, high-end screen, 2 gigs, 64 gigs. Currently, we're looking at a Bay Trail T processor, but we believe by the summer we'll be able to release the Cherry Trail, which will allow us to bump the memory to 4 gigs if so desired. We will have this available in quantity in June. I will have demos available for this next month. It's basically a Yoga knockoff. Sells for $479 US. Really nice product. High-end, high quality, a great screen. $359 for a 11.6-inch device. Again, high-end screen. We have demos available for this now if you're interested. We haven't done the final testing on it, but we should be able to do that relatively quickly. So Don asked, what knockoff? Sorry about that. It's I don't know what they call it anymore, a clone? it's built from the ground. This device, I'm assuming, Don, is what you're talking about. It's very much like a Lenovo Yoga. There are some features on the Yoga this doesn't have that you can compare, but we're trying to bring, again, an education device that we think this is probably more high school student, teacher, administrator. That's what we're hearing. So we should have demos for this next month if anybody's interested. So that's the formal part of my presentation, and I think I'm 3 minutes over. I appreciate your time. Somebody asked me to show this one. Sounds like you said I did. Show the picture. I'm not sure which tablet you're looking at. These are the kind of the pictures of the tablets with the keyboards here. I know the other ones don't have it, but this one has the handle on it. This is the one that we have currently available for $399 or $499, depending on which configuration you buy. This device here is much like the Surface, only it's 10.1 inch. Has this keyboard on it here, which is a folio keyboard. It also has a protective case that provides quite a bit of protection in the classroom. So again, folks, I thank you very much for your time. I've abused you a little bit. We're a little over time here. I appreciate very much you spending the time with us today. I hope you found it informative. That was our goal. We try to be as agnostic as we can in terms of what we think the devices are. So on behalf of CDI and myself, thank you very much for your time. Again, I hope you found it a useful hour. Cheers.